On this episode of Full Bore, I make another poor life decision. This is an RN46 Toyota Hilux from 1981. It was the third generation of Hilux, but the first generation to offer a four-wheel drive model. It's one of those models that really cemented Toyota's status of reliability and really promoted its presence in the off-roading world. Now, this particular example would have left the factory with an 18RC 2-litre single overhead cam engine, and as you can see, it is absolutely clapped out. You may be wondering why on earth I have actually purchased this hunk of trash. Well, it no longer has an 18RC engine in it. It has what they call an 18RG. Now, what makes the 18RG so special is that it was one of Toyota's very early twin-cam engines, the head being, of course, designed by Yamaha. Now, the aim of the game for this episode is to get this marvellous little machine running so we can go and have some fun with it. Now, with any good project, it always starts with vacuuming the various feces off of your engine. Going to take the spark plugs out to give them a quick squeeze and see what sort of condition they're in. And what I'll also do is actually drop a bit of oil down into each cylinder and let it sit for a little while to try and sort of break everything up in there, because this thing's been sitting stagnant for such a long time. We don't want to just go ahead and start it up whilst everything's absolutely bone dry. Not that I reckon it'd start up straight off the bat, but I don't know, probably just good practice to do this. When I'm looking up spark plugs, generally what I'm looking for is sort of an odd one out. One that's sort of dirtier or oilier or rustier than the rest of them, and that'd indicate that that cylinder's either had water or has got a burnout valve or something like that in it. All of those sparky boys seem to be in pretty good nick, all things considering. Now, old matey told me that this car's been sitting around on his property for the past 3 years, which isn't a huge amount of time, but apparently it was sitting on his property for a fair bit longer beforehand, before he'd actually got around to doing anything to it. So I'm just going to squirt a bit of dinosaur juice down in each one. Now what I'm going to do is, I've got a bit of oil in each one of those cylinders there. I'm going to see if it actually turns over, which is probably something I should have done before I bought it, but hey, I was just overwhelmed by the absolute brilliance that is the 18RG, and the fact that I've never actually seen one before. Hey, they're pretty rare. They're not like super duper rare, but you can't go wrong. Ugh. Oh mate, this thing turns over like a dime. Now, I've got to say, I've dealt a fair bit with like 22Rs. I've done a little bit of work on an 18R, just the standard overhead cam. This 18RG is just something else. And just a reminder that back in the late 70s, if you had a twin cam engine, that was just absolutely light years ahead of anything else that was sort of on the road. And really the only cars that had that were Alfa Romeos and Jaguars and all that really high-end stuff. So to have a twin cam engine in something such as like a Celica back in the day, which wasn't an overly expensive vehicle, that would have been, I mean, they would have been a little rocket ship. That said, I've never driven one personally, so I can't really be 100% certain of that, but I'll tell you what, they're a pretty modern looking engine compared to the other stuff that was kicking around. Like, to put it into perspective, the 18R, which this thing was based off, was a single overhead cam, which was still pretty modern back in the day, but it had a cast iron head. It wasn't even crossflow, so you could almost think of this thing as almost like the forefather of the 4AGE, and to an extent it is, because the head's designed by Yamaha. It's a twin cam head. Really, without these motors, potentially we might not have ever had beautiful engines such as the 4AGE and 3S GTE and all that sort of stuff. So what I'm going to do here, I've got all the spark plugs out of it. All I want to check to see is whether or not the starter motor works, because I know that the thing turns over, it's not full of water or anything silly like that, which is kind of amazing considering the huge hole in the bonnet. Okay. This one's an Aussie made battery, so therefore it should actually work, hopefully. What do you reckon of my new car?
Where are you going to take that?
Oh. Well, you don't like it?
No.
Why not? It's not junk. This thing's magnificent. You're hurting its feelings. Man, it even sounds like it's got spark. That's amazing. Whilst I got the spark plugs out of it, I'll just crank it over, see whether or not I can get oil pressure. That's assuming that the light in the dash works, but hey, we'll find out. Nice, we've got oil pressure. I haven't really even looked at what the oil looks like. I'm assuming it's got oil in it. Yeah, that oil is nasty. Oh well, looks like I'll have to do a service on it at some stage, but hey, I better make sure it actually runs before I go and spend the money on flaming oil, that's for sure. Things are looking pretty promising for this little 18RG. Of course, it's not locked up. It doesn't have any water in it. The starter motor actually still works. And of course, the next part is to get some spark plugs back into it to see whether or not we have any compression. And maybe we can get some fuel up to those carbies to see if we can start that beautiful process of internal combustion that we all love so much. Apprehension was building for the first start of this little 18RG. The excitement's so great that Davo, the mechanical wizard, actually found his way into the front yard to see the event firsthand.
Does the fuel go so it's got anything? It's got 4 barrels.
Well, yeah, it's a pretty nice machine, Davo.
Mm-hmm. It's got one a bit iffy, isn't it? Alright, giving any trouble?
Is that working?
Yeah, kind of. Bracket's a bit ordinary.
Wow, that's amazing. It feels heavy.
Let's do an audio compression test again. Crank it over.
Ready?
Yep.
Oh, mate.
Mm.
That's flaming.
Go again. Go along. Yeah, that's pretty good.
Mate, this motor's finna schmick.
Oh.
Like, I mean, she's not running schmick, but
Yeah, the motor's real.
she sounds like a dime.
Sounds alright. And the compression's good.
You know why? Because it says Toyota on it. Well, there we go, boys and girls. That is why you buy a Toyota, because this thing has been sitting on old mate's farm for 3 years. It hasn't been started. All it took me was really a bit of a spray of carby clean and a few cranks, and away she went. And for a car with 2 carburetors, that's pretty amazing, because carbies are temperamental at the best of times. Well, the story goes, the fella that I bought this thing off actually bought this car as a part of his property, so he actually doesn't really know how long this thing has been sitting there for, so the fuel in the tank could be even older than 3 years, that's for sure. You may be wondering, what the heck am I going to do with it? I've already got a Bandera, a 40 series, a Corolla, I've even got a Corona sitting somewhere. So why do I need another Toyota? Well, number one, it's a Toyota and you can never have too many of them. And number two, that 18RG is just a magnificent engine, and really it's the only reason I actually bought the car. And I've got some pretty big plans for this thing. I don't think I'm going to part it out or sell that 18RG. I reckon that motor deserves to stick in this car, at least for a little bit longer. Well, that concludes this episode of Full Ball. We'll catch you next time when we next meet on a future episode of this channel, which is Full Ball.